Hey guys, AJ here. Welcome back to another video. In this video, we are gonna make a character equip a sword and a shield. So if we go pick this item up, and if we click on this item, it is gonna spawn on the hand of the player. And let's try one more. So this is a item which contains both sword and a shield. So if we click on it, it is gonna replace this shield. The shield is gonna go back to the inventory, and this is gonna get spawned on the player's hands. And tada, we got that ready. So yeah, let's get to the video. So guys, first thing, we are gonna create a game object to hold the equipment that we wanna place on the player in the equipment script. Also guys, I kind of changed the menu name here. It was inventory slash project 0 slash equipment, and I changed it to project 0 slash inventory slash equipment. Nothing important, but I just wanted to tell you that. Now you are gonna need a game object, and this is gonna be called equip prefab 1. And let's have another in case there are items which come as a set, as in a sword and a shield, or like some two swords or something that you can use. So we are just gonna have two game objects for this. It's called this equip prefab 2, and set these to null. And also have another boolean variable over here to say if the item is right-handed or not. So if we have a sword, we can make it right-handed, and if we have a shield, we can make it left-handed. And by just using the hands equipment slot that we have here, we are gonna have a condition in the equipment manager which checks if the equipment needs to be equipped in the right hand or the left hand, and then put it in there. So I'm just gonna call it is right-handed. And these two prefabs and the is right-handed is only going to be used for the weapons, for the helmet, chest armor, and shoes, everything. It's just going to use the equip prefab 1. Now let's go to equipment script and make the changes there to equip these items onto the player. So first thing we are going to need here is a instance of our inventory. So I'm going to create a variable player inventory, and let's call it inventory. Let's set the inventory to get component. And if you have seen my previous video, we have the component player inventory, at least in my case, on the game manager, which is kind of a parent for all the child playable characters. So in case you are just going to have one player, you just need to use get component. Otherwise you're going to use in parent player inventory. Now in the equip method, before we put the new item on the current equipment slot, here we are going to have a new field of type equipment to hold the previous equipment and then send it back to the inventory. And I'm gonna call this old item, and we're gonna set it to null. Now here we are gonna check if the current equipment slot did have any equipment. So if current equipment slot index is not equal to null, then we know that the player was already holding an equipment and we need to send it back to the inventory. So we are gonna set it to old item, and we are gonna call inventory dot add item to slot and pass in old item. And we are just gonna need to send one item to the inventory, so we are gonna pass in 1. And it is not actually in add item to slot, is it? It is going to be add item to first empty slot. Yeah. Now we go to add item to first empty slot, by clicking on go to implementation. Here we have the code to put the item, find the first empty slot and put the item in there. And these are things we have discussed in a previous video, so you can go check that out if you want to. Now we are gonna say current equipment slot index equal to new item, and then we are gonna call a new method which we will create soon, and it's gonna be called equip item, and we are gonna pass in the new item. Now in the equip item method, we are gonna go through all the slots we have, and we are gonna put it in the slot where we wanna have the item spawned. For example, in the hands in case of a sword, or on the head in case of a helmet, and so on. So here we are gonna need a parameter equipment. Let's call it equipment, and I'm gonna create a switch case here, and this is gonna be of type equipment dot equipment slot. And in case the equipment slot is the hands, so equipment slot dot hands, then we are gonna equip the item onto the player's hands. So before we can equip the new item onto the player's hands, we need to destroy the old item from the player's hand if the player was already holding any item. So we are gonna create a method here, destroy old weapon, and this is gonna take the transform of the player's hands. So we are gonna need two transform for right hand and left hand. So now here we can call the destroy item, destroy old weapon method, and pass in the left hand and the right hand. So here we are gonna create a field for those, that is the right hand and the left hand. So serialize field transform, and we are gonna drag and drop the player's hand onto the equipment manager fields, left hand and right hand. It's called this left hand transform, and let's call this right hand transform. Now in the destroy old weapon, we can pass in the right hand transform and the left hand transform. Here we are gonna create a game object and call it left hand, and instantiate equipment dot equip prefab 1 on the left hand transform. Now we are gonna use the left hand, the game object, to give it a name. So let's say left hand dot name equal to, we are gonna have a string here called hand item, and we are gonna set it to hand item. And let's use this string to give this left hand item a name. Let's duplicate this and do the same for right hand item. Here should be prefab 2 and right hand transform, and let's set the right hand to hand item, and the names here are given just because we can use that name to destroy the item in the destroy old weapon method. So if we go to the destroy old weapon method, we can use transform old weapon 1 and set it to right hand dot find hand item. So this is gonna check the right hand transform which we passed down here and find the hand item which has the name hand item, and we're gonna do the same thing with the left hand. So here it's gonna be old weapon 2 and here it's gonna be left hand dot find hand item. Now we are gonna check if old weapon 1 equals null and old weapon 2 equals null, which is the case when the player wasn't holding any weapon in the beginning, and in that case we can just return because we don't want to we don't have any objects or weapons to destroy. Otherwise we are going to check if old weapon 1 not equal to null, and if it is not null then we are going to destroy old weapon 1 dot game object. And here again, if old weapon 2 not equal to null, destroy old weapon 2 dot game object. Now one thing we need to know here is we need game object on both the hands only when the equipment has 2 equip prefabs. So here we are going to check if equipment dot equip prefab 1 is not equal to null and equipment dot equip prefab 2 not equal to null, and in that case we are going to do this, else we can just say transform hand transform equals. Now we need to check the item is right-handed or left-handed because we have only one prefab in the equipment. So here we are going to use a ternary operator, and that's going to be equipment dot is right-handed question mark, and if it is right-handed we are going to say right hand transform, else we are going to say left hand transform, and we can instantiate the object on the corresponding transform, that is right hand or left hand, which is now in the hand transform. So here we are going to say hand equals instantiate the equipment prefab, that is equip prefab 1. So if there is only one equip prefab, we are just going to put it in the equip prefab 1, and equip prefab 2 is going to be empty, comma hand transform, and just give the hand dot name as hand item. And here we are getting an error because we didn't put a break. So let's add a break for the switch, and the coding part is done. Now we can go back to Unity and see if we are able to spawn item on the player's hands when he picks up an item. Now in the prefabs folder, here I'm gonna create a new folder called equip weapons, and in the resources folder I have created a new folder called items and equipments and moved all the scriptable objects in there. So we have a blade and everything is as before. We have Now newly added equip prefab on 2 and is right-handed. So for the blade, I'm gonna check the is right-handed, and I have also added a new scriptable object, which is a blade and a shield. So here we are gonna have both equip prefab 1 and 2, and for the shield, I'm just gonna say is right-handed is unchecked. Now in the weapons folder, I have the uh, sword and the shield imported from Blender, and I think you would have downloaded these from my previous video. Now what we're gonna do is we are gonna let's say open this player up, the prefab up, and here if we go down, and you can open this Mixamo hips by just clicking on Alt, right click, and here if you go down, you are gonna find spine, left arm, and left hand. This is what we are gonna use as the player's left hand. So this is gonna be the place where the weapon gets spawned, and the right hand as well. So we are gonna drag the right hand, drop it in the right hand transform of the player equipment manager, and drag the left hand and drop it in the left hand transform. Now we are gonna open up the weapons folder we have, where we have the shield and the sword. Then we are gonna child the shield to the left hand of the player, and we are gonna child the sword to the right hand of the player. Now we are gonna need to hit play and adjust the positions of the sword and the shield. But before that, let's just go to the shield, hit reset, and where is the sword? Yeah, and the sword, and hit reset. Now let's hit play, and you kind of got a tiny little sword and a shield in the player's hands. So what you're gonna need to do is, let's say we resize the or rescale the size of the shield to 2 in all axes. Okay, I think we gotta go do here instead of the prefab. So shield, I'm just gonna set it to 2, and awesome, we got a shield now. Now let's try working on the shield to get a position where we can have it to be spawned from. So it is gonna make it a lot easier if you just pause it. So I guess we are gonna do that, and then we just need to rotate it a little bit like this, maybe here in the set direction a bit, and move it here. Now let's hit play, and you're gonna need to try to move around with the shield so that you are sure that it is not behaving funny on the player's hand. Now we can just copy the component from here, stop the scene from playing, and we can just drag the shield from here into, or drag the shield from here into the equip weapons slot. Okay, first I think we need to unpack the prefab. So right click on the shield. Okay, is this the, let's say we go to the player, the prefab, go here, unpack prefab completely. There it is, and we can drag it onto the equip weapons folder. Then we can open the shield up, and here are the three dots. We're going to hit here, and we're going to paste component values that we copied from the scene where we adjusted the shield on the player's hand. Now we can go back to the scene to adjust the blade. So and of course we are gonna get this because we didn't change the shield in the player's prefab. We just made a we just unpacked it and created a new prefab and saved it to there. So in this scriptable object, we are going to be using this equip shield, and for the sword, we are going to just pause it again and try to adjust the size and everything. So for the sword, I'm going to say the scale is going to be 5 times on all axes. Then we are going to need to rotate this. So I'm just going to do this and make a prefab just like we did for the shield, and get back when it's done. I think this is pretty boring and you can do it on your own. Just need to adjust the blade so that it would look like the player is holding the sword. Now I kind of got a good position for the blade and the shield for the player. So let's say we go back to the player prefab and delete the shield from here, delete the sword from here, and now we can use the equip prefab and instantiate them when the player clicks on the inventory item. So we are going to go to the resources folder, items and equipments, the blade, the equipped prefab one, which is empty now, is going to be the blade, and is right-handed, it should is to be checked for the blade. And then for the shield, the equipped prefab is going to be this shield, and it's going to go in prefab one. And for the set where we have both a blade and a shield, we are going to say that the equipped prefab 1 is going to be the shield, and sword is going to be the equipped prefab 2. This is because in the code we set the equipped prefab 1 to go in the left hand and equipped prefab 2 to go in the right hand in case we have two items. And this is pretty much it. So now we can hit play. Now let's say we collect this items. Hope we got all three. Yeah. And if we click on the sword, it is going to spawn in the player's hand in a position which you think the player would hold the sword, because we use the equip prefab. And if we try to click on this shield, the sword is going to come back to the inventory, and a shield is going to be spawned on the player's left hand, because the sword is a right hand item and the shield is going to be a left hand item. Now if we click on this item right here, which has both a shield and a sword, you're going to see that the shield has come back to the inventory, and now the player is holding both a sword and a shield, and the sword is on the right hand, shield is on the left hand. So all good so far. Now in case you're going to have multiple playable characters, this line here, equipment manager dot instance dot equip, this is not going to be working, because you are going to have just one instance of the equipment manager, and it is going to be the one which you add to the first player. And even if you add equipment manager to other players, it is still going to refer the first equipment manager. So here we are going to have a problem, because the equipment manager is going to try to equip the item onto the first player even if you selected the second player. Here what you can do is you can use find object of type equipment manager, and then call equip from there and pass in this. In this case you don't really need an instance, a singleton here, so you can just go ahead and delete that. So another issue you're gonna face in case you're gonna be working with multiple players is that if you say equip this onto this player, everything is fine. uh, but if we move to this player and try to equip the item, you're gonna see that the shield is kind of cutting the player's arm a little bit. And what you can do is, like, a workaround for this is you can go to the player's prefab, then let's say we had the shield on the left hand, so I'm just gonna create an empty game object on the left hand, and let's just call this left hand. And on the player in the equipment manager, instead of giving the real left hand of the player, we are gonna give this empty game object that we created, and we are just gonna go to the scene and do the same here, because even though we changed in the prefab, it's not really reflecting here. So let's drag the left hand over here and drop it in here. Now if we hit play, now if we equip this player with the sword and the shield, now the shield is going to be spawned on the new empty game object, and we can now kind of adjust the position of the empty game object to adjust the position of the shield. I think that is good enough for this character. So if we hit play, we can see that the shield is now not kind of cutting the player's arm. So we can just copy component and get out of the game scene and paste component values, and let's just go to the prefab and do the same, and you'll be fine. So guys, that's it for today's video. Hope you like this video on equipping the player with weapons, and in our next video we are going to make the player have a sort of different kind of animation using an animation override controller when he is holding these items, because right now if he press these attack buttons, he's just gonna do this punching animation with the equipment, and it doesn't look very nice. So maybe we can make use of some animations in Mixamo and make the player do a uh, attacking with sword kind of animation, or tackling with a shield or something. And yeah, hope you like this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, let me know your comments, and go ahead and subscribe to my channel, because that would be really helpful. Until next time, see ya, bye.